I'm Janet Morena, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Just Ask Janet. Well, I want you to stick with me because I'm going to have a homework assignment for you that you really need you to do at the end of this program. So stay with us for that news. And now we're going to talk about abortion internationally. I know very often, we think about here Roe v. Wade, overturning Roe v. Wade, which we're making great progress. But we also have to understand we're big influencers here in America. We influence what happens all over the world, when it comes to politics, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to a whole host of things. People look to America. And right now, as you know, we have an abortion hungry, loving president and vice president and the whole Democratic Party. There's not an abortion they don't like. But there's some bright light good news happening. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. And joining me, I'm going to read you a little bit about this marvelous woman. Her name is Valerie Huber, and she has been involved in women's health issues at both domestic and international levels since joining the Department of HHS in 2017. And she has more than 15 years experience leading programs that advocate for and invest in the lives of children and young women and men. Before joining the administration, she co-founded and served as president and CEO of a national organization that empowers young people to make healthy decisions in relationships and life. Before that, she was a public health advocate at the Ohio Department of Health, overseeing programs serving almost 100,000 students each year. And of course, she is very involved now, and she's a special representative for the Global Women's Health at the department HHS. And they launched, back when she was with the department, the Geneva Consensus Declaration at the United Nations. And that's going to be our topic we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the program, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me, Janet. I'm very excited to talk with you today.
Well, first of all, you worked under President Trump at the Department of HHS. And so that's when that department had a breath of fresh air after Obama. And it had more of a pro-life presence now, didn't it? I know it saved Priests for Life and the Little Sisters from the Obama HHS mandate. So just explain about that difference of what happened when you started working there under President Trump.
Oh my goodness. Yes, day and night difference. And we had such a courageous secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, who was not afraid to stand up for life and to do so publicly. And there were many of us in the administration, particularly at HHS, who had that similar courage and actually felt very missional about making changes that were going to preserve life, strengthen families, promote genuine health gains around the United States and around the world. Most particularly in the Office of Global Affairs, where we were a tiny little office, but we were responsible for global health diplomacy in every country in the world, including in international settings like the United Nations and World Health Organization and Organization of American States and such.
And Valerie, I don't think people realize that who's ever in charge in our government, whether it's the Republican Party that, of course, leans pro-life, or the Democrats that leans loving abortion, that affects our work overseas internationally. And so when you were at the Department of HHS and dealing with global affairs, you were able to do this Geneva Consensus Declaration, right? Tell us a little bit about that and what was the whole purpose of it. And then we're going to talk about what's happening now. But tell us about the declaration.
Okay. Yeah, I really think it's would be helpful for your viewers to kind of look inside our brain on what led to the genesis of the Geneva Consensus Declaration. I was new to working in the international space, but I was tasked with promoting women's health and being an advocate for life in every arena globally that we were involved. And what I found was really startling to me. First of all, I found that countries that were pro-life and pro-family were being um, intimidated, were being threatened. Uh, Even in diplomatic circles, the the kind of reception that they received was very undiplomatic. And I saw this as more than just a pro-life, pro-family issue. I also saw it as just a human justice kind of issue, because the sovereign right of countries to be able to legislate on these very core issues to their own existence were really um, being challenged. And some countries, even those that were very pro-life, were intimidated into silence in international settings, and even in their own countries were being pressured to change their laws. And some of them did change their laws thinking that it wasn't going to really impact life, but there were nuances in the things that they agreed to that they didn't understand, or were told that they actually meant something different than they did. And it was just egregious to me. And when I began hearing these stories from one country after another country after another country, I thought, we need to do something. And as you know, the Trump administration was probably without question the most pro-life administration that we've ever had here in the United States. And yet we knew that in these international spaces, that if we just made strong statements and represented just the United States when we left, it would be kind of like taking a finger out of an ocean. That we needed to do something to protect the countries, to work in common together and create a coalition that wasn't led specifically by the United States, but that countries would come together, large and small, having equal voice to support those core values of life and family in a declaration. So what
So
we,
now,
yeah.
go ahead. No, so the declaration itself, then, what does it exactly say that countries are signing on to?
Yeah. So we knew that a declaration could be something that could be introduced in the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and other places, but even apart from those international bodies, it would stand alone as an agreement that the signing countries would stand for four pillars in particular within the declaration. The first was that all of these countries would work together to promote and expand women's health and thriving. As I'm sure you know, and many on that are listening today know, here in the United States, we have it pretty good. We have it very good in terms of healthcare. And the fact of the matter is, especially in developing countries, and especially where women are just beginning to have some of the opportunities that we've had for many years here in the United States, their access to life-saving health care is still beyond reach. And so women in many of these countries are suffering, some even dying, from things that are totally preventable, totally curable, or at least treatable so that they can live normal, healthy lives. But what we saw was that the whole conversation surrounding women's health was being co-opted by a debate over abortion. And that debate was never going to have agreement among all of the nations of the world. And so who were the losers in all of this? Well, it was those women who, just beyond reach, could have those medicines, could have clinics with running water and electricity, but they weren't able to get them because abortion advocates were derailing that conversation. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is protecting life and making it very clear that there is no international right to abortion. Connected to that, the third pillar is that the family is foundational to every healthy society and it must be protected. And then the fourth pillar is that every country should have the sovereign right to make their laws defending each of those preceding pillars without external outside influence, whether it be an international body like the UN, progressive countries, or NGOs who are trying to make abortion a reality in their country.
Yeah, and Valerie, you think about it. For the 4 years we had President Trump in the White House, um, any aid we gave overseas did not have abortion or contraception married into it. But now with the Biden administration, some of these very, very pro-life countries, they like they have to choose our principles of not wanting abortion in our country, and you can keep your condoms and your birth control pills, or we're not going to get aid just for basic to help us, like with water supply and food and other things. I mean, that's the situation now, isn't it? That with the Biden administration, it's like they're forcing them not to get aid if they take the other. It's like a package deal, right?
Yeah, it's really egregious. The United States has been the largest funder of family planning for the last 50 years. And we provided family planning even under the Trump administration. But what made it different was that it was in no way coercive, and it didn't include abortion. And we also put some parameters in place that really gave countries a lot of freedom in either choosing yes or no for certain things. And those sorts of things are being removed. And what we have, as you said earlier, we see policy changes that we expect between a Republican and a Democratic administration in the area of life. But what we have seen under the Biden administration is unlike any other administration that we have seen, Republican or Democrat. And that concerns me very, very much.
And when you say this is concerning you, what more extreme things are they doing that we have to be aware of?
Well, as you know, the administration called for certain congressional protections against taxpayer dollars for abortion, for example, to be struck from funding bills. This has never been a realistic possibility. But in addition to that, there are some other things that even the Obama administration never did, and it really goes to the logical argument that they are creating for abortion. On day 8 of the Biden administration, they made it very clear in a presidential proclamation that their domestic and their global policies on these issues were going to be linked. They were very forthright about that. Now, they used nuanced language that, unless you were really steeped in especially international pro life work, you may not catch it. And I think that was by design. But essentially, they were saying in their foreign policy and in their domestic policy, abortion and policies that devalue the family are going to be a overriding priority, both domestically and globally. And we have seen them be true to their word already. But in addition to that, when you patch together things that the president has said and the vice president has said, we also see this logical argument for abortion that no other president has made before. The
Yeah.
first is the first is that healthcare is a human right. No other president has ever said that before. The second is that abortion is healthcare. And the third is that abortion is a human right. No other president has put those three pieces together. And that is really the calculated strategy being used internationally to force countries to change their laws in support of abortion, and then to ramrod policies from international organizations, coalitions of progressive countries, in tandem with nonprofit organizations from around the world, to put more pressure on countries than we have ever seen in history.
Wow. And we also know, leading into what you just said, that in Congress too, they're stripping internationally and domestically they're removing Hyde and Helms amendments, which stayed under Clinton and Obama. But now with Biden, no, they're going to take those out too. So you're right, they've gotten so extreme. But just to go back, with this women's health thing, under the pro life world, of not including abortion. What people don't realize is in some of these poorer countries, things we have access to women's health here in America, like mammographies to prevent breast cancer and exams so that we don't have ovarian and cervical cancer. There's just the list goes on and on that we have this like taken for granted automatic. We go every year for a mammography, but in some of these countries they don't even have the equipment to do a mammography, right? And and so when you have this more pro-life, pro-woman administration like we had under Trump, that kind of funding and doctors going over and helping in these countries is what happens. But now they're not going to give them a mammogram machine unless they say yes to abortion. I mean, isn't that's how extreme that they're getting right now? The country has to like give in, or you won't get other aid and help, right?
Well, Janet, you really brought up a very important point, and that is you're right, the things we take for granted, but it's even more basic than a mammography machine. It's having electricity in a clinic. It's having medicines in the medicine cabinet. It's having trained health professionals staffing it. It's having clean running water, the very most basic needs. And then let's just take an example. You have a woman who finds out she's pregnant. Getting the kind of prenatal care that we know is really essential both for mom and for baby. And then if there are any sorts of complications, if she has to walk, a day's walk to get to a clinic of any kind, she may or may not make it, and the baby may or may not make it. And let's say, for example, that one of these NGOs that is coming in behind in the borders of a pro-life country, for example, under the auspices of U.S. funding or funding from the World Health Organization, and they provide medical abortion, let's say, which the World Health Organization is encouraging countries and NGOs to do, especially in countries where it's illegal. So let's say she uh, chooses to have an abortion, has very little information, but is told that everything is okay, and she's told the lie that it's even more safe than childbirth. And let's say something does go wrong, which is, especially given the parameters that are realities for a woman in a developing country. Let's say she hemorrhages and needs to immediately go to a clinic, and there's not one within kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, and there is no health assistance for her whatsoever. What are her chances? And we already know the chances for the baby, uh, but oftentimes these women are only given a part of the information, and they don't even have any kind of medical care to give true medical information to her. It's on so many levels. It is wrong. It's dangerous, and it must be prevented.
So now the Geneva Consensus Declaration, how many countries have signed on? And I think we just recently had a country last week sign on. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we were very intent that when we started working towards standing up the Geneva Consensus Declaration and the ensuing coalition, that it not just be centered in one region of the world, but that in fact it would be worldwide. And so there were regional leaders in each of the major regions: Brazil, Egypt, Hungary, Indonesia, and Uganda were the regional leaders, and the United States. Um, and then we had countries agree within those different regions to be a party to it. We ended up having 35 countries representing more than 1.6 billion people from each of those regions of the world. That declaration was signed on October 22nd, 2020. So we are approaching the 1 year anniversary of that. And just 10 days prior to its anniversary, we were so excited that Guatemala signed on as the newest member.
That's amazing. And of course, sadly, I think President Biden took us out, right? He canceled us being in this agreement, correct?
Right. So on day 8 of his administration, he signaled that the United States was going to remove its name from signing, um, and then sent a communication to all the other countries saying that they were going to that we were going to be removed, and communicated the untruth that because the US was removing its name, the document was essentially a dead letter. Well, not only is that false on its face, because that's not how coalitions work. Members can come and go, but the coalition remains as long as there are members remaining. So it moved from 35 countries to 34 countries, still representing every region of the world and still representing a sizable number of the population. However, the fact that the president of Guatemala made a very public statement last week saying with just courageous words that Guatemala is a pro life country and that they were very happy to become the newest member of the Geneva Consensus Declaration. I believe that their signing on does a couple of things. It not only brings the number back up to 30 from 34 to 35, but it also communicates to all of the other 34 countries that this is not only a coalition that is alive, but it is growing. And I would not be at all surprised if, as a result of the president of Guatemala's actions, that additional countries will come on board as members, particularly in Latin America. And we really hope that to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I could picture Latin America. I think even a lot of the Caribbean countries, I would guess, would be another ripe area. Because the people of I've been to quite a few of those countries, and the people in their heart and soul, they're pro-life. I mean,
Yeah.
I was in Jamaica a few years ago speaking because they were trying to make abortion legal in Jamaica, and of course, we got there, came in with talks and Silent No More and the women's testimonies, and we were able to hold it at bay. I think it's starting to bubble back up again. It's just because the forces of evil, they don't give up. And they particularly prey, I think, on these small countries because they feel they're so impoverished on other arenas that they can kind of come in and just their tentacles get in there. So it seems to me we have the best chance with the smaller countries coming on board. And there, Valerie, there's one more thing I want to remind everybody. They don't understand, I don't think, how extreme we are here in America on abortion. Abortion to birth, and excuse me, you brothers and sisters, most of Europe only allows abortion in the first trimester only. And the countries that allow it to birth, like America, are countries like Russia and China and a lot of the communist socialist countries. So, like, is that what you want to be proud of? That you're just like China and Soviet Union? You want to kill babies to birth? Or, I mean, shouldn't we be dialing back? The country that was, founded on freedom is the country that's doing the most killing of the unborn. It's just ironic. So, uh,
You know,
it,
yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead.
You, well, I just want to say it's so true. In addition to that, I think a lot of Americans don't realize that if you are pro life, our pro life work and stance can't stop at our borders. The influence of the United States, yes, with our funding, but also our influence is immense. And it can either be used um, for good or for evil. And in the area of promoting abortion internationally, too often it's for evil. And that's the season we're in the United States. And so Americans need to know not only what the American taxpayer is paying for in international assistance, but also how the good name of the United States is being really marred by our taking on really radical ideological agendas as the foreign face of the United States. It's really an embarrassment But more than that, it's really wrong.
Yeah. Well, I want to invite our viewers to, first of all, be praying for you. First of all, let's pray. They should be praying, first of all, for all the countries that already signed the Geneva Consensus Declaration. Is there a special web page they can go to see all the names of the countries, or to read the whole declaration? Where could they go to find all that information?
Well, our website is just being constructed right now. So, right now we have a landing page, but all of that information is going to be on our landing page, I mean, on our website very soon. And it is the IWH.org, which stands for the Institute for Women's Health, the IWH.org. Um, I'd also really encourage not only prayer for those countries, but that they will stand strong even in the midst of pressure that is either already at their doors or will be very soon. In addition to that, um, really that this coalition will not only continue, it will grow, it will be mobilized into a formidable power to protect life and family. I really
Yeah.
believe that the reason that President Biden removed the United States in really almost the first week of his administration is because he saw the possibilities and the power that could really emanate from a coalition of nations representing every region of the world in support of life and family. So they have to continue, and we want to support them in any way that we can. They need to
Right.
hear thank you often from organizations, from governments, from members of Congress, from individuals. That will be a real encouragement to them as well.
Well, Valerie, thank you so much for all this wonderful information. Thank you for joining me. And of course, we will keep you and your whole team in our prayers. And you know what? I'm going to have you back next year on the second anniversary. And I'm going to pray that we double those countries between now and then, because we serve an awesome God. And I think if we all storm heaven with prayers, I think we can do it. I think there's enough pro life nations around the world that we can get more scientists. So thanks
I
again. You are
agree.
an amazing woman and a real powerhouse, and God bless you.
Thank you, Janet. It was a pleasure spending this time with you.
Well, brothers and sisters, thank you too for joining. Excuse me, joining me. Like Valerie said, IWH.org. That's where you're going to go. You can read about it, see the countries, pray for those countries, but pray that they find more countries that will have, just like the president of Guatemala, the courage to stand up and protect the unborn children and their mothers and fathers. Because we know here that abortion harms everybody: the mother, the father, the grandparents, the whole family, future siblings, all of society. Well, thank you for joining me today on Just Ask Janet. And remember, brothers and sisters, as always, there are some abortions only you can stop, some lives you can save. Join me again next time on Just Ask Janet. Thank you.